this point, maybe they feel they're just going to lay down, but he has to testify or they can't prove their notions. That's the end. That's just the facts, I think.
I think he will.
Sorry, Mark. Let me just jump in real quick. Maui reports that it was said apparently by the judge in court yesterday that they may end today. But go ahead, Margaret. I
missed that. Okay, I watched every second of that trial yesterday. I feel like I did, and I missed that. Maybe I didn't hear it. So yes, I feel that Brian is probably thinking, I have nothing to lose, and that's why he would testify. I would feel the same way. I mean, all this blood evidence and DNA doesn't lie, right? So he's got nothing to lose, and get up there and say, listen, yeah, I did all these horrible things, but I didn't kill her, and just maintain that over and over and over. And I don't know if it'll work or not, but why not? He has nothing to lose at this point.
Yeah, Maui reports it was hard to hear. I remember that there was a moment where it was hard to hear for about 30 seconds what the judge was saying to the jury. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think also, with Brian, it gives him a chance to get up there. All he has to do is plant that one seed of reasonable doubt. And as I've discussed before, it's a 5-pronged test in terms of proving that this was first-degree murder. And, he can get up there and try to sell a story. It takes one person to believe him, only one.
Well, it's true. Or only one to make it a hung jury. Only one who's going to, one or two that's going to say, you know what? Yeah, he did all these horrible things, but can we prove how Anna was killed? Can we prove whether Brian killed Anna? And if, was there any premeditation? I mean, yes, we can guess that a fight occurred. So, and they may follow the letter of the law and say, there's just not enough evidence here. It's possible. You're right, Jen.
It's possible. By the way, can I digress and talk a little bit about Reed just for 1 second?
Sure.
Did you see the foreman who came out? I'm putting it all over my Twitter because it's so significant. Did you see in an interview, and again, I don't watch what these people say, but fortunately I have a lot of people sending me different things that are said, where he specifically says that the public corruption issue outweighed the fact that Karen Reed hit John O'Keefe. I was just like, drop the mic. Okay, people, exactly. From the beginning, I've said this was a case of jury nullification, just like OJ. Their issue was race in the OJ. That's why it was nullified. And I play often the juror talking about that, of why they voted that way. And in this case, now we know straight from the jury foreman's mouth, there was a nullification issue, and that was public corruption. So,
yes,
I get it.
You know what?
They were angry about that.
Jen, we were talking about that yesterday, even. I believe the three of us, because remember, we talked about Proctor. Were you here for the when we talked about Proctor? And I really think that those vulgar texts, and even though it was his personal phone, they really, I think, put them over the top as far as, listen, this is not right, and we're going to take it out against the Commonwealth, no matter what we think, whether she hit him or not. It's jury nullification. I can't agree with you more. And what a shame that that had to happen.
It's just a shame.
That foreman also had said that his first that he first made up his mind that something was going on when he heard the paramedic or the firefighter testify that John was wearing a coat, and it turned out that he wasn't. So this foreman grew up black in a neighborhood where there were a lot of issues with trusting the police. So he came into this trial with a lot of maybe understandable baggage, but he came in with a lot of baggage that made him kind of conditioned to not want to trust the system.
But he wasn't the only one. And I really think it was the Proctor factor here. I really do.
I think that was a big one, but again, Proctor was never proved to be corrupt. Proctor was just proved to, be, and when I say corrupt, this is what I consider corrupt. Corrupt is when you lie, you plant evidence, You otherwise take an investigation away from the facts and from evidence. He didn't do that. He talked horribly about Karen Reed, horribly about Karen Reed. I promise you, that is not generally the term, or not generally what would be necessary to fire somebody. It was easy in this case because what he did through that verdict. So I agree with you. I think what he said and what he did and what they brought out was a huge reason why the verdict was what it was.
Yeah, well, I also think he showed bias, though, which is, forget about the crude. Yeah, there was crude stuff and everything, but I really do believe he showed bias, and that's what bothered me as a prosecutor. I would not have wanted to deal with Proctor, and I know the prosecution didn't want to deal with Proctor. It was like the worst part of the case.
Yeah, and when you say bias, this is my only issue, depending on what we're talking about here. After 16 hours, which I think was the mark that he made some comment that he was pretty convinced it was her. All I'm saying is, as a case agent, being in these shoes before, you know so much after 16 hours, because it's not just 16 hours. It's the work of dozens of people over 16 hours, and it's all filtering through you. So you're aware of a lot of work. So it's just take 16 times 10 times all those days. I don't like when people say, yeah, it was just 16 hours when they don't understand how police work happens. That's a lot of information he would have known by then. And plus, he was there on scene. There were shattered taillight pieces. It was dead right there, but where she was.
I know, but I still feel that in sending those text messages, he appeared biased, and that was one of the reasons he was fired.
I agree.
And, you may feel that way. You may feel, yes, the girl is guilty. We're going to get her. And but I just, by sending text messages to his high school friends, it was the appearance of bias. And I don't think he should ever work on another murder case again. It's just my opinion. I was upset as a former prosecutor about those actions.
None of the jurors on either trial have mentioned Proctor being a factor. That's not to say that he wasn't, because only a certain percentage of the jurors have spoken.
Right.
But,
well, I'm sure that it's part of the police corruption. It's I think that's what they mean. Absolutely. He's
well, sorry to digress. I just had to digress a little bit because
I just feel that he really tainted the case for the Commonwealth. And opinion.
I'm not going to say he didn't.
Yeah.
And as we've as we've all talked about here, we have we can compare this case we're on here not only to the Karen Reed case, but also to the Birchmore case. And they all seem to show different aspects and different things. And which shows that it's complicated. You can't draw from one thing and take a lesson. So you encounter police corruption, and therefore you rush to the conclusion that all police are corrupt. That's just not the way it works. And so it's good to see. No, but I'm just saying we're seeing in this case here, what seems to be highlighted, police doing their job and doing an effective job and testifying very credibly in this case here. In the Birchmore case, we're possibly seeing where the police dropped the ball because of their, because of the police, the wall of blue there, where Trooper Garino had the main part of the prosecution there was the messages that the FBI was able to interpret. Now, was the state police and Trooper Garino unable to decipher those messages for some technical reason that the FBI had better tools to do that, or was it that Trooper Garino deliberately overlooked those things because it involved police officers? We don't know, and hopefully someday we'll find out. And then and then compare that to the Karen case, where again I don't see police misconduct, well, not related to planting evidence, but obviously Michael Proctor's
I'm not saying actions
were very inappropriate. So.
Yeah, I'm not saying anybody planted any evidence. I don't see any.
No, I know.
But what you can do as a defense attorney is you take one thing like the Proctor texts, right, and then you can plant doubt in the jurors' minds. Well, this guy's corrupt. Did he plant evidence? Blah, 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 you know, so on and so forth. So sometimes it can take one bad apple to ruin an entire case like that.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that for sure. I mean, that's how it was extrapolated that, oh, if he can talk dirty about a defendant and seem to have his mind made up in 16 hours, which I've already explained that, then that means he could plant evidence even though he never did.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, they're going to take that and run with it. Just having tried so many cases and dealing with, you know, a cop that comes across in the stand is not truthful. That's going to blow my case. They just hold the Commonwealth or the police and the prosecution to a higher standard. They want you to dot those I's and cross those T's. So I know that when I was, I spoke with Hank early on about the case, and that was a problem. He knew that. We talked about it. That was a problem. So.
Look, prosecutors want. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Another thing that came up in that case was just that. So I was responding to a tweet on this morning. So, and this is going to come up in a lot of cases. There are certain things that are just not good. We're never going to get a full explanation or even any kind of a satisfying explanation. And one of the ones in the Karen Read case was who deleted, if they were deleted, or are they just missing the Ring videos? There's no video of Karen coming home at 12:36. There's no video of her pulling into the garage at 12:41. And there's no video of her leaving at 5:45 with Jen and Kerry and Karen showing the ladies her broken taillight. That's missing. Were they deleted? The testimony in the case, nothing was submitted. Nothing ever came from Ring. Trooper Guarino had basically said, we don't know of anybody else accessing the account from any other device. So it's left as a mystery that either side, can kind of to try to take advantage of. And for a healthy defense team, you can try to create reasonable doubt with it. Yeah. So that's going to come up. God, Jen, you've probably seen that, or Margaret too, in a lot of cases, right? Yeah. Where it's just certain things aren't explained,
Certain weird, unexplained things. So remember, defense attorneys, like, look at this Brian Walshe case, for example. Tipton has an uphill battle. He's dealing with this guy who dismembered his wife. There's all sorts of blood evidence, tissue and hair and slippers and all that. So he's got an uphill battle here, and they're going to take the slightest thing and run with it. And so far, the police did their job. I mean, there's nothing. He obviously went through all those text messages or everything, Proctor's phone, in advance of this trial in hopes to find something he could run with against the police. But obviously, so far we haven't heard anything. So I doubt he found anything he could run with. You never know, because they haven't put on their case yet. But, the slightest thing you're going to, this is weird. They this trooper threw his phone out. Something's wrong. Or they were targeting Brian Walshe from the get-go. Anything that they can possibly hang their hat on. Trust me, they will. That's doing their job, defending their client. But so far, it's an uphill battle in this particular case. So,
and let's face it, this defense attorney, Brian Walshe does not have the dream team that Karen Read had, and Karen Read had the dream team. There is no doubt. Alessi could do all that research, and Jackson, I was never impressed with Yannetti. I've said that a long time ago, but the other two, I just think these guys, this defense attorney doesn't hold a candle to them, obviously. And he has way worse facts.
Yeah, he doesn't have much to work with here.
Yeah, agree. For sure.
Yeah. And Karen also had the big crowd of supporters that grew and grew and grew.
Well, and the biggest thing she had was somebody who for years, for money's sake, was paid, and when I say paid, was made financial gain in completely polluting the jury pool, as well as polluting social media and mainstream media on the facts of this case. I mean, he just made it up as he went.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, that was a huge, huge problem, what they did. And you can look now, it's so interesting to look at, what did she make, 2 million on this, something like this, and then look at where she is at raising money for, you know, her, you know, to me, her quest to get all of these poor witnesses somehow to look bad, right? She's raised like $5,000, 9,000 something, some small amount comparatively. So
Right.
people are either seeing the light or they've just given all they can give. When I saw some of these people who said, yeah, we're not going to eat tonight, but I'm giving to Karen Reed tonight, I was just like laughing at them going, okay, you know, at some point, this is just your stupidity. Go ahead, you know, give.
Music by Brian, who did a great job yesterday because he used to work in a DNA lab. So he really filled in a lot of blanks for us. And he comes to us by way of Jen's channel. So Jen, you must know Music by Brian. And he says basically just as guilty as Brian Walshe, but he says that Brian Walshe has a huge fan club online saying that he was framed. So I was unaware of that, but I believe it. You know, seems like that happens in every case now.
Oh, Brian is such a great person to have, you know, watching. And I will say, we might not have the largest followings when it comes to trial followings, because that's really not what our channels do normally. But wow, do we have educated people and people who really look at the evidence. I just love watching comments.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I like the comments as well.
Oh, actually, I'm sorry. I just got to correct for Brian. Brian was referring to another Zachariah Anderson. So my mistake.
Oh, okay.
Do you guys know that case, Zachariah Anderson?
I don't know that case. But I will say, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if you would have told me that and it was Brian Walshe who had a fan club. I'm not at all surprised. These people are, they're nutty. You know, people watch it, you know, Luigi Mangione, his harem, Brian Koberger had a harem.
I have to cut out. I don't mean to cut you off, Jen, but I have to cut out. I will be back, but I do have to cut out quickly, but I will be back.
Okay, we'll miss you, Margaret.
Thank you, Margaret.
Yep. How do I take myself off?
Oh, I can take you out.
Okay, thank you.
There we go. Thank you, Margaret. We'll see you when you get back. Tolley says that Melanie believes that Anna's still alive. Well, you know what? We have no body, right? So maybe it could have. Now, Brian's not arguing that, but he could have attempted to argue that, right, Jen?
Listen, he could have. He's already admitted. For anybody who thinks that Anna is alive, he has agreed that he dismembered her and disposed of her already. He's already pled guilty to that. So that shouldn't even be a conversation with anybody that she's still alive. I know some people literally love to hold on to hope for these people, these victims, but that is just well beyond the realm of possibility at this point.
Right. He found, so as we heard yesterday, blood and other DNA evidence on the hatchet that was matched to Anna, and blood on several other sources that was matched to Anna. And I don't remember, maybe you can refresh me, Jen, did the blood that they found in the house, did that also match DNA-wise to Anna?
I don't know if every piece matched to Anna. In other words, there was a lot of specimens on, you know, rags on the floor, on the ceiling, all over the place. And I don't know that every speck matched, but there was a lot that did. Does that help answer that question?
Yes. And this, I'm going to answer one for Starry Night. She says, that is why I don't understand why the blood is such a concern. He said he chopped her up. Well, he didn't actually say that. We don't know exactly what he said, just what was reported in the papers. And the closest I could find was that we know he pled guilty to disposing of the body. And it said in one of the articles that I read that he did inform the court that he disposed the body in multiple bins to be incinerated. So bins in the plural. So you would have to chop a body up for that. But I don't know specific. I don't know if you know, Jen, specifically what he told the judge. Any details on what happened?
So specifically, him pleading guilty essentially to the indictment and what
Right.
happened and the bags and everything, that implicitly admits his guilt to dismembering her, because that was the entire point of the disposal method. That was a huge part of the disposal method. So as you pointed out, he admitted to the multiple bags. He admitted to the indictment. And so I don't know that he got into the specificity per se, but he doesn't have to. By admitting to the indictment and pleading guilty to that charge, he implies the dismemberment, because that was the charge. Or
Right.
that was the
And we don't-
background of the charge, sorry.
Right. And we don't know for sure if he's going to testify. So the jury doesn't know that he has pled guilty to these things. And that's an argument that the judge has requested both sides submit their opinions on it. So we don't even know what the jury is going to find out. If it prejudices the jury, if, for example, for the jury to find out that he pled guilty on these things. So the state still has to go through step by step with their original plan of showing the jury what happened and what evidence they have to suggest that he dismembered the body.
And I've always said that in my view, they should not show that. That's just my view, that it's more prejudicial than it is probative. They've been given the opportunity. In other words, if the judge would have denied allowing all that evidence in, then that's a different discussion. But because all that evidence is allowed in, let the jury draw their own conclusions of how that leads to proving that he committed a murder.
Right.
So we'll see what the judge ends up doing, though.
So is the voir dire going on now, and they're deciding not to show it for some reason? We know there's supposed to be a voir dire, and the jury is not supposed to, I think, was coming in at 10 today.
Yeah, I that could be. Like I said, I think voir dires are very unusual unless they're involving experts. So I'm a little confused what exactly is going on here.
Right. Judge Carroll did kind of explain it to us yesterday, why there would be a voir dire on this witness. If there is, and I don't remember exactly what it was. Hopefully she's listening this morning and she can post it. But it had to do with if the defense is going to say there were discrepancies between this witness's statements, I believe.
Oh, in other words, that when they talked to police the first time versus
Yes.
the second, that there were, but that's something that should come at the trial. That doesn't, that's
what
when
I
the defense takes the opportunity to say, listen, they're not reliable or believable because they gave multiple statements. So that's really odd to me. I can't imagine this witness won't be let in.
As a non-lawyer, that's what I thought too, but there was a technical reason why it had to be done this way, and the judge explained it in chat, and I think Margaret expanded on her explanation too. So hopefully she'll come back. It wasn't something that I committed to memory, so I can't really put it in the judge's words.
Well, and there could be some nuances with Massachusetts law. I've come to found out there's a lot of nuances in Massachusetts law,
Right.
including that you can say falsehoods before in a courtroom and not be sanctioned. I mean,
right.
I've seen so much that could never ever happen in federal court. It's just every time I watch one of these, I'm like, wow, I feel so blessed that I was in the other court system.
And is this why? So the witnesses that Karen is suing had petitioned to get the trial moved to federal court, the civil trial, and it has been.
Oh yeah, it has been, and thank God. That told me the caliber of attorneys that they're dealing with. In other words, just to think about that, it's so brilliant to move into federal court because there's not going to be any of these shenanigans allowed. I mean, I expect that this case will be dismissed That's my expectation. It's that it's not even going to make it anywhere.
Mhm.
When I say that, I'm talking about the suit against the witnesses in this case, the suit against the innocent witnesses that came forward that were in that house. I expect it to be thrown out, and I don't even, I still can't believe that they did this to them. But I'm hoping it's thrown
Right.
out. I think it will be thrown out. If it would have stayed local, oh my gosh, who knows what would have happened.
Right, and it has no chance of winning in and I think obviously her lawyers know that. The purpose is more just trying to influence public opinion. So Western Mass Mark, welcome. I don't recognize the name, so thank you for joining us. Says that, and there are a lot of similarities between this Brian Walsh case and Adam Montgomery, who Judge Carroll wrote a book
Yes.
on. So he says Adam Montgomery pled similar to things prior to his trial. I don't believe the jury was allowed to know that. So yeah, we should know that. I mean, hopefully the judge knows that.
No,
That's a
I
great
did know
point.
that. I brought that up.
So was that true?
Yes, yes. I brought that up
Okay.
in my tweets about all of this. But listen, this is the same Adam Montgomery ploy to plead to everything except, oh yeah, I didn't murder my daughter. I did everything else to her,
Right.
but I didn't murder her. And it didn't work
Right.
then, and I don't think it's going to work now. So yes, I'm glad he reiterated that, that this has been, tried before and in a Massachusetts case. So I don't think, like I said, that it should be allowed. It's too prejudicial, and they've been allowed to see the evidence anyway.
Right, right. So that's why the state has to painstakingly go through. For people in the public, they're like, why do they have to go through all this? But they still have to lay that down for the jury.
And quite frankly, the prosecution wants to do that, Kevin. The prosecution wants to show all this gruesome evidence and the hatchet. And hopefully, like I said, they still haven't brought Anna alive yet. But the gruesomeness of what he did to her and those tools that were used, I mean, gosh, just for a lot of people to imagine that have never ever thought of such a thing, it's pretty gruesome.
Jen, since we have some time, something I've wanted to ask you since you brought it up, I think last week, was your work for the FBI on looking for weapons of mass destruction within the borders of the United States. I'd love to hear more about that. Your phone connection's been a little bit off today, but it's getting a little bit better, I think. So maybe if you have anything you could tell us. So, for instance, was there any moment where you really felt nervous, like the hair on the back of your neck was going up, like, oh my God, something could happen here? Do you have any stories on that particular work? Or maybe you can't even talk about it. I don't know. But
well, a couple of things. First of all, everything in that unit is protected with clearance. In other words, no, not only do you need to have the top secret clearance to hear about it, you also need to have the need to know. So any specifics I can't say, but obviously we worked with flaps and seals, and just generally it's a situation where anytime you're doing anything, I'll say it this way, covertly, you're always got a little bit of a pucker factor, right? It's so different than law enforcement working foreign counterintelligence, because when you're working law enforcement, you're the one, all decked out in raid gear, getting ready to crash in and make an arrest or serve a warrant, right? It's so different. In this, you're hoping not to be seen, not to get caught, not for anybody to know. So it's a very covert type of work that the Bureau does, and that nobody really can ever talk about. So I can leave it at that, yeah, to me, anytime we did a mission, I'm always pucker. I never was pucker factored, or seldom. You're pucker factored for about a minute, and then your training kicks in. It's a lot less scary to do a raid at a home as a SWAT operator than it is to do a covert mission in a foreign counterintelligence matter.
Were there any moments, and again, I know you can't be in specifics, where you really felt worried in the sense that you might not be there in time?
Sure.
Something was going to happen in terms of a weapon of mass destruction. Those could be obviously a dirty bomb. It could be biological. So I know you can't say anything specific, but were there moments where you're like, damn, this is close. If if only the public knew, and maybe it's good that the public doesn't know. But were there any
I think
moments where you just felt really like, wow?
I think it's always good for the public not to know, because
Mhm.
it would just cause panic and deep concern and all of that, which I do get, but that doesn't help anything, right? It doesn't help anything.
Right.
So there just unfortunately has to be some trust, and I know people are going to probably say trust. We don't trust the government, but there has to be some trust that the government, because they do this every day and work these sort of platforms every day, know what they're doing, and their sole mission is to protect the citizenry. I will also say, I work nuclear counterproliferation. That was my area of work and expertise, if you will. So I was not in, the radiological unit or some of these other units that existed that had more explosive type, as you said, implications in the work.
Mhm.
So I wanted to make that clear too. For us, not getting to something or, being discovered or something like that would just more mean losing information from a technological standpoint.
I guess to me, what had always seemed the most likely thing for an actual really widespread kind of attack would be something involving biological. Um, and especially nowadays where this is probably even more advanced now, especially with AI, but where you could tinker with a virus or tinker with a bacteria and create something that would really hurt or harm a lot of people. But obviously you may not have been on those units, it sounds like, and you wouldn't be able to talk about it if you could. But so actually, because you weren't on those units, is that something that you think is can you talk about that? Is that something that you think is worth worrying about? And fortunately that there are people out there in the government focusing on it, in law enforcement?
Oh, well, certainly it's worth worrying about and being as educated as you can about. On my Twitter page, anytime something comes up where scientists or individuals are arrested for those crimes, which just happened, I just did kind of an expose on one, on two scientists, I believe, as I recall, they were in Michigan. I think it was the University of Michigan. And particularly, that was biological type warfare that focused on, as I recall, agriculture aspect. And so anytime I find a story, and I'm always looking, that I can bring this to the public's attention, that obviously has been declassified, or at least they want the public to know, so they're allowed, the information is allowed out to a degree. I always feature that on my Twitter, and I look for those stories because I want to highlight for people what's really happening, and that they, generally, hopefully people are aware. And the reason I say that is because I think it's so important for people to be aware of what's going on in their surroundings when you see weird things or people acting oddly. I think where people are going to see that more is at airports and at huge sporting events, and especially around Christmas, Macy parade. And the things you can look for are more brick and mortar, as you and I talk about, backpacks that are abandoned, somebody doing something odd, like throwing something in the trash, a big thing, and then running away, or communications that they see between one person that might be trying to communicate with somebody else across the street in an odd or a surreptitious manner. All of those things, the public is so critical. The New Orleans situation, there was a lot of clues that went on like that in that case. And so it's really, the Bureau is dependent on the public for recognizing those types of things, because those are weapons of mass destruction, bombs, biological warfare, certainly. But I mean, to me, the more common are bombs that are used in places where there's a mass gathering.
The last time I traveled, I was at Logan Airport. This was about 2 years ago, flying down to North Carolina, and I was at Logan Airport in Boston, and in a crowded terminal, and I went in to use the bathroom, and when I came out of the stall, there was a guy who was a youngish black guy, who was in the process of putting on one of those ski masks that covers your whole face. And it was not a cold day. It was November, but it was not a cold day. And I was like, what do I do here? Do I report this? And so, I didn't really know what to do. So what I decided to do was just kind of go and sit where I could watch the bathroom, and also where I eyed where the nearest security person was. So if I saw something that made me more suspicious, that I would go to that security person. But I think we lost Jen. But nothing ever. I never reported it to anybody, and nothing ever happened. So, so I don't know why he was putting on that mask. Oh, we got her back.
Sorry about that. I listened to what you said. So what happened with the ski mask guy?
Nothing happened. So, nothing. I never heard of anything happening. So I would have felt bad, I guess, if I didn't report it and then something did happen. But I just wasn't sure. So I just kind of stayed in a place where I could watch the bathroom and kind of watch things. And I eyed the nearest security person who was actually near one of the terminals. My sense was if I went to that person, they were just going to think I was crazy. I guess that's why I didn't really do it. But,
so I would have reported it. I would have just gone to a security person in that terminal, and I would have said, listen, this might be nothing, but it's kind of odd considering the time of year, and he's masking his whole face. So personally, that's something I would report.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Your Honor, in the matter of the Commonwealth versus Brian Walshe, criminal indictment 2023-0091, continuation of jury trial. Defendants present in court with counsel. Counsel starting with Commonwealth. Kindly identify yourselves once again for the court and the record.
Good morning, Your Honor. Greg Connor for the Commonwealth.
Good morning.
Good morning, Your Honor. Ann Yaz for the Commonwealth. Good morning, Your Honor. Tracy Cusick for the Commonwealth.
Good morning, Your Honor. Good morning, everyone. Kelly Porges on behalf of Mr. Walsh.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Your Honor. Larry Tipton for Mr. Walsh.
Right. Madam Clerk, before I lose these, on the record, I'm handing you back these two exhibits. I'm going to have marked for identification the information I asked from the parties this morning. I've just handwritten on whose is who, so that can be marked as the next. I think it might be N for identification. The first two pages that I asked for from both of the parties.
Oh, you want them both to be in?
They can go together. It's my handwriting on the top as to whose is who. All right, do we need to discuss anything before we bring Mr. Mutlu in?
I have a few things that I would like to discuss. It could be after Mr. Mutlu, but there are a few things before the jury comes in that I would like to discuss about witnesses that I'm going to be doing directs of today.
All right, why don't we discuss that now?
Thank you. Could we see you at the side of the bench?
Oh, sure.
Thank you very much.
Well, at least they're getting.
How long do you think this voir dire goes?
20 minutes. I can't imagine it going longer than that, unless I'm missing something here, because it's got to be about whether he's qualified to talk about her health. That's the only thing I can think of what it would be. But we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, someone asked.
So I did bring us in on the sidebar, just not sure who's talking to Margaret, but
Commonwealth just outright asked Brian Walsh.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yes, if he takes a stand, are they allowed?
I don't know if she's being interviewed on TV.
I saw that. I mean, during cross-examination, there's wide latitudes.
I'm going to take Margaret out just because I think she's not intending to be with us. I added her to the stage, but it sounds like she's doing a TV interview.
Yeah, it sounds like she's doing some sort of interview or talking to somebody about it.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to, obviously, it makes sense to me that the voir dire ended up with him being able to testify. I can't imagine that it wouldn't. I think it's interesting that the prosecution is asking to meet with the judge on other witnesses too. She just wants to have all those points of law and anything the judge wants to decide on done. So it doesn't
Right.
interrupt the testimony. And this is what I'm talking about, how smoothly this judge operates. Yes, we're having some, bumps that they're going through that are not actually us hearing testimony, but this is why it was such a hot mess in the Reed trial, because it was constant, scattered what was happening and sidebars and issues, they weren't decided in advance. And I
Right.
just like to see this going smoothly like this. I'm glad to know this can happen in a trial in Massachusetts, because after the Reed trials, both of them, I wondered, is that just how all these trials go?
Right. And those are questions that we in the public, most people in the public probably have not watched a trial, certainly not many trials, until the Karen Reed case. And so now we're getting a view of how the system works. Probably a decent percentage of us have served on a jury, but maybe not for several years. So there were a lot of sidebars in this case yesterday, Jen. You're right. It's gone smoothly, but yesterday there were a lot of sidebars. It was almost more sidebar than trial yesterday. But, we're not going to cover all the sidebars today.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is the overall feel is so
Agreed.
different. It's not a shotgun. It's not an interrupting of testimony constantly. It's just, I give this one an A, and I give that other one I don't know, B.
I kind of was okay with Judge Canoni for most of it, but then I even understood why she, her Karen's Sixth Amendment rights, especially as a murder defendant, were going to be paramount. So they were not going to take away her attorneys. But then, as you said earlier, why was there no discipline after the court? I mean, even after the trial, even the judge implied there's something, and even in fact, the defense asked if there's going to be discipline here, it should be after the trial. And yet doesn't seem like anything happened. So,
and that's in large part what I'm referring to. And then I also don't think in the second trial, his messages should have been read. I watched many other trials, and in other situations, you cannot have that. It's so bizarre that she allowed that. Now, Proctor testifies, free game, but without him testifying, for them to be, and I just saw a trial with the exact same circumstances, and of course the judge didn't let that in. Some person up on the stand, reading from their personal discussions. I just thought that was so wrong. Oh,
Right.
Kevin, I'm going to have to sign off.
Okay, thank you for being here, Jen. And if you
Kevin,
come back at all during the day, I'll be watching. And
I am so sorry. I'm going to have to sign off. Okay. That's great. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jen. All right. So thank you for Jen. She had sometimes if Jen's on the road or something, her connection can be a little bit off on her phone. So there were times when it was coming in good, though, like when she was talking about her former work for the FBI. That was really good. That was a moment when her phone was coming in very clear, too. So, yeah, as I was saying, most of us, so Jen, she's not a lawyer, but because of her work with the FBI, she was involved with a lot of trials. And then now she does work testifying as an expert. So she attends a lot of trials. So she gets to see a lot to compare it to. For most of us in the public, we haven't gotten to see a lot of trials. Maybe we watched a little bit of the Murdoch trial or, the OJ trial or something like that. So, when you really pay attention to something like the Karen Reed trial and now this trial here, you start to see how the sausage is made, right? And we end up having a lot of questions. And we're not always sure if it's the most efficient way that it can be. The jurors seem to like Judge Canoni. Judge Canoni kind of comes across as the mother of the court. But Mike is correct. She permitted the circus outside, although a lot of other people, including Judge Carroll and other lawyers, have said there's really wasn't much she could do. There is, we have a First Amendment right to demonstrate. I think the First Amendment right to demonstrate should be limited by a court trial. So, for example, if that was a vigilante mob outside that was calling for Karen's neck, we wouldn't have wanted that, right? So if you can suspend the right to free speech in that situation, why would it be any different in this? A trial is not a place for demonstrating. Just like you can't demonstrate inside the court, you shouldn't be able to demonstrate in a way outside the court that's going to affect the trial. So the jurors should not have to see or hear any of what's going on with that mob. That's what I think, anyways. And it was clear from comments from the jury that they were affected, or at least they could hear it. Margaret's kind of on standby, and we're not going to do. I'm not sure why we're not seeing the voir dire if that's what's going on right now. Hopefully, we will see it. We're not going to do all the sidebars today. We are here monitoring the situation, so if something happens that's more than an ordinary sidebar, it's a lot of work for us to do this, and to do it every day, to have to be available for every sidebar is hard. Yeah, Maui said it's a big sidebar. That's right. They did go to sidebar, so it's not the voir dire at the moment, but hopefully we will see the voir dire. Right. You never do know how long a sidebar is going to be. Right. So we'll be here monitoring it. But obviously there's only so much benefit you can have from my commenting on it. Anyways, I'm not a lawyer. So most of the benefit comes from hanging out in chat and seeing what people in chat are saying, especially since each one of us is probably going to miss moments of the trial and people in chat can fill in the blank. Judge Canoni was known before the trial as judges have a reputation as being pro-defense or not pro-defense, and she is known for being pro-defense. But it's interesting how the other side thinks that she was anti-Karen. So a lot of things depends on what point of view you're watching something from. So if you look at the main screen, you'll see we do have the chat showing in the bottom right. That's an option. I chose to put it up there. And if people don't like it, the CC's up. Let me just, there's nothing really going on, but the CC is up, but there's nothing going on in court right now. So that's why you don't have any. I don't think there's a way for me to put on CC for my voice. I've never seen it. So we stream this from an app called StreamYard, and I've never seen it. CC is on, Jane. It is on. I made sure I put it on this morning. And I'm looking now, and it is checked on. I don't think that the FKR people are pretending that Judge Canoni was anti-Karen. I think they believe it. And it's because it's just natural that people on both sides of an issue, they want every ruling to go their way. And the reality is there's going to be mostly split decisions, right? Or the decisions overall will be one will go one way and one will go the other way. And so when you're kind of partisan or partial to one side, you see every decision from your point of view and you want it to go that way. The StreamYard banners. I don't see a banner up there now. Do you want me to get rid of the chat? That's the only option I have here is I don't mean get rid of the chat in the chat box, but I can. If you see if you look next to Brian on the screen, the window is up there showing chat. What banner is up? I don't. Let me go to the YouTube and see if it shows there. I don't see a banner. It says live with StreamYard. But I can't get rid of those things. Those come with the StreamYard. Yeah, I can't get rid of those things. The live with StreamYard, it's a StreamYard app, and they're trying to, they want it to be known that it's their program. Just like the little symbol on the top right corner is something that I made up. But if I take out that watermark on the top right, it puts a StreamYard watermark up there. So there's no option for me to just make that completely go away and blank. Just like also on my name, it says logic plus evidence equals truth, but I have to put something there. So normally that's there for me usually to put my name on, or for anybody that comes on to put their name up. But you can put right. So I have written in, instead of my name, I wrote in logic plus evidence equals truth. But I don't have an option of making that completely go away. So there has to be that little banner there. I don't mind keeping the chat there. I'm asking what people want. I've all right. So Jem is the friend and former employer of Anna, who was the only person that was celebrating New Year's Eve with them hours before Anna went missing. So it should be really interesting testimony to see, did he see any friction between the couple that night? I think the voir dire is over the possibility that he may have changed his statements to the police at some point. So I'm not sure. We'll see. That's a very good point. Does the chat on that screen show all three platforms? I didn't even realize that. If that's so, that is good. I was hoping that eventually StreamYard will set that up so that on the main chat window that we're watching, it's set up for everybody. I can see it from all the sources because I'm watching it on the StreamYard. That's the app. So, but you can only watch that. You don't have people in the audience don't have that option. So if somebody posts from Jen's channel, I see it. If somebody posts I also have it running on my Twitter and on my Facebook. Jen has it running from her Twitter and her YouTube, and I can see all of those. But I can't, if somebody comments on Jen's channel, I can't delete that. So if they say something insulting, I can't delete. I can only delete things that are on my channel, but I can highlight it. So if somebody comments from any of the channels, I can highlight it and it goes up on the screen. So Miranda says she's on Jen's chat and she can see Jen's chat on the screen. Oh, good. So everybody can see that. That's good. Thank you for that information, Miranda. Obviously, ultimately, we wish we could combine it all into one chat so you don't have to go to one channel. But, so most people have ended up in my channel just because my channel is a little bit larger and a little bit more active. And I feel bad about that, but there's nothing really I can do about it. But we keep obviously mentioning Jen's channel and Margaret's channel so that people will subscribe to those channels and watch when they're doing shows that we're not doing. Over the years, Jen has been able to get some really good interviews on her channel, but she's so busy being called to testify and other things that she has, she's told me she's had, she's been frustrated that she hasn't been able to put the attention at this time into it that she wanted to. But because of her work as an FBI agent and also her work on various TV channels and stuff, she's able to, she has in the past been able to get in some great guests. For instance, she's had on one of the original FBI profilers. Margaret's channel is a little bit newer on YouTube. She's had her channel's been much longer as podcast. She's been doing podcasting for a long time. To look for Margaret's channel, go to YouTube and search It's a Crime Media with Margaret McLean. But you need the whole thing because there is another channel up there that's called It's a Crime that is unconnected to Margaret, and it's an older channel with more subscribers. So that comes up first unless you put in the whole thing. There may be different ways, search parameters. The way I have found it when I had trouble finding her channel initially was It's a Crime Media with Margaret McLean. Yes, and Joe is doing an outstanding job, my moderator, putting up Jen and Margaret's channels repeatedly with links, so you can find it that way. We all get there. A lot of times, so when I'm on, I definitely much prefer having other hosts on with me or guests if we can. And when I'm with Jen and Margaret, because of their professional careers, I try to focus on asking them questions. I don't have the proper professional expertise, so I try to focus on I try to ask them the questions that you guys would ask them, or if I see you asking them a question in chat. For example, I asked Margaret a question yesterday that when she was a prosecutor, did she socialize, for instance, with judges and things like that? Did they not that closely, but do you go to the same cookouts, the same Christmas parties and things like that? So is there a natural connection? And some people in chat were saying that they always had wondered the same thing. So I try to tap into the regular questions, the questions that us regular people outside the system would ask. What goes on behind the scenes? And of course, many of these judges at different times were defense attorneys within the state. And so the defense attorneys also have a connection with the judges. A lot of these people have come through the same system. So a lot of the defense attorneys also have a social connection with the judge. But are the prosecutors more likely to have a connection with the judges? It seems likely to me they would, but I don't know from my own experience. Just like the prosecutors are not technically on the same side as the judge, but it feels like they're more on the same side than the defense team is. And they may be more likely to see each other in the hallways every day and that kind of thing. Just go looking through chat. Thank you, Maui. MS goes to the YouTube search bar and she's had trouble finding it, and she's a subscriber too. So, well, let's give it a test. Let's give it a test right now. In fact, since we're quiet, I'll do it so we can all see it, and then I'll go right back to the Court TV feed. So let's try. It's a crime. So without the other things, just it's a crime. Hopefully she'll start to show more. No, see, it's another channel that shows up. An older channel with more subscribers. 233,000 subscribers is that other channel. So there's a lot. Now let's try it with media in there. And yeah, it doesn't show up here either. Let's see. All right, so let's try it another way. Let me try it by taking out the spaces. I think that's actually the way I searched it. And you may have to put an @ in there too, but no, and that still doesn't seem to come up. All right. I'll go right back to the court in a second, I promise. All right, so here we go. You got to get Margaret's name in. So It's a Crime Media, Margaret McLean, and you see it comes up right on the top. Let's go back to the feed. All right, see, we didn't miss anything. Is Brian actually wearing a suit today? What is that? Or sport coat? All right, so put in Margaret's name. That's the best way. And Miranda says with no punctuation works too. If you can remember her last name, I used to sometimes misspell it, MSJ. Looks like a sweater, but there's a collar on it, isn't? Or is that underneath it? Make the screen bigger. It could be some kind of a sweater with a collar. And Margaret's been doing media since before she started coming on this channel. And I'm actually the one that got her the court TV gig. And before she started doing things like that, she had been on media before when she was covering the Whitey Bulger case. But I can definitely say that I have seen, tremendous growth over the last 6 months as she's become more comfortable going on those shows. So that's why she's getting invited on a lot of shows. And her book is on the Whitey Bulger trial. So it's not unlike many of the books that go into Whitey Bulger's life. This one is on the trial. That's where it's different. And it's a very good book. I forget the name of the book, even though I have it and I've read it. I always, let me see if I can find it. I always, I become, even though I've always, back before the digital age, one of my favorite things was to go into a bookstore. Oh, let's see. I can't even log into my Kindle. So I would go into a bookstore probably once a week and get lost in there. And I really enjoyed that. But then in the digital age, I've gone to Kindle books. I really enjoy, okay, I'm in now. I enjoy having access to books on all my devices, including your phone now, which is great. So you can open a book anywhere. And I also like being able to highlight. All right, let's see if I can find the name of this book. It's Whitey on Trial is the name of the book from Margaret McLean, McLean. Good morning, Carol. Carol says all right, this was the question we had earlier. Prior inconsistent statements in police reports require the judge to evaluate admissibility outside the jury's presence if there is any question about authorship or inconsistency. And so the question that came up to Carol from Jen was whether that's a Massachusetts thing or is that common for most states? Is that something that would also apply to federal law? And good morning, Chick from the Ricks. So this apparently the voir dire is going to involve the witness, Jem, who was Anna's prior employer, and also a friend of theirs, but he was their only guest for New Year's Eve. And so apparently there may be prior inconsistent statements in police reports involving him. Carol said, good morning. I'll be listening and on NBC 10 tonight. What time are you on NBC 10, Carol? So people can go check it out. But I am involved and during interviews on the DCF case where a child died. Press conference is 11. Okay, we're getting back to court.
Almost went sliding off the back of my chair. Hold on a second. All right, we can have Mr. Mutlu in.
Thank you, Your Honor. Commonwealth would call Mr. Jem Mutlu.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm testimony you shall give in cause now and here and shall give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Just step up, just watch your step. Slide this chair underneath. You can have a seat. Do me a favor, just keep your voice when you speak. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Excellent, we can hear you. I'm just going to ask if you can keep that microphone reasonably close to you, sir. Can you please spell your first and last name for the record?
Sure. It's officially spelled C-E-M, last name M-U-T-L-U. I also spell it with a G, G-E-M.
And can you state your name for us, sir?
Jem Mutlu.
And sir, right now I'd like to just focus on asking you some questions about a conversation you had with Anna Walshe on December 29th of 2022. Why did you call her that day? Why did you two talk that day?
I called her to congratulate her on her closing.
And how long was the conversation?
I believe it was about 45 minutes.
And besides congratulating her on the closing, what else did the two of you talk about?
We caught up as friends. We talked about plans and also her life at the time, how she was feeling, and yeah, we caught up on a number of things.
Okay, so what did she tell you about her life at the time?
That what I got from it was that there were some issues, marital issues included, and yeah, and that she was. I told her, I said, I don't want you to be too strong. Have you
Do you
considered?
remember she said as far as marital issues? And not your feeling, but what you remember the conversation to be, sir.
Sure. Part of it was that she was going back and forth from DC, which was taking a toll on her, and the fact that that Brian had not been able to leave Massachusetts, so the children were here, and that was a huge burden on her psyche, and that, you know, there were other issues. I don't recall with precision as to what they were. I do recall clearly making a mental note to say, this is going to be a much longer conversation, face-to-face, together, and a conversation obviously we never had an opportunity to have.
Okay, so within that conversation, when she had discussions with you about marital issues, it was, I want to make sure that we've got this right. The difficulty of traveling, was that it, one of them, for work?
The fact that she was not seeing the children
Okay,
frequently.
all right,
Yeah,
so that's more accurate, and I don't want to misstate what you're saying, sir.
that's correct.
Not seeing the children, and was also another part of it that Brian couldn't leave Massachusetts.
That's correct.
And I don't want to put words in your mouth, sir. I want to make sure that I'm getting your memory of the conversation. Is that what your memory of the conversation is?
Well, my memory of the conversation is that they had marital issues and that she was seeking counseling for all the difficulties in her life, including marital issues.
Okay.
And I encouraged her to do the same because she's a very strong person. And
Yes.
yet I specifically remember telling her, I don't want you to be too strong.
Okay. And within the marital issues, did she say specifically what the marital issues were?
I don't recall going into detail during that conversation. There was
Okay.
another conversation we had in the summer. I remember that the parts of that conversation, that was almost a 2-hour-long conversation. I was in Puerto Rico at the time, and she and I had a lengthy conversation. At that time, she said that that Brian's art fraud case was taking its toll, that attorney fees were piling up, and that there was a lot of strain financially, a lot of difficulty, and yeah.
Okay. But more to the point of December 29th, I'm going to ask you again.
Yeah.
Did she say anything in the December 29th conversation with you about Brian not being able to leave Massachusetts?
I don't recall with precision. I recall the feeling of it. I do not recall with precision as to whether those words in particular were spoken.
Certainly. And do you have any memory of when she discussed marital problems with you on December 29th, any issues of not seeing the children? of her stating that?
Again, I do not recall with precision what words were spoken.
Okay.
That was the gist of a lot of her problems.
Okay. So when you say that's the gist, is that the gist from the December 29th conversation, or is that your understanding of her overall problems?
I believe it's both.
Okay. All right. So now I want to ask you about New Year's Eve. On New Year's Eve, did you see Anna texting at all?
I did.
And from what you know of New Year's Eve, not from what people told you afterwards, do you know who she was texting to?
Yeah. That I recall, I believe she was texting Abdullah. I believe she was texting Will Fasto. And I believe she may have been texting Emily, a mutual friend. And other people were texting her. It was New Year's Eve, so there was a lot of back and forth texting. Yeah.
And how do you know this from New Year's Eve? What did you experience, see, or what did you experience on New Year's Eve that lets you know this?
I was sitting right next to her.